That took
Okay.
them a lockout to get.
So their goal is to get that at least. Let's reach a half and half because right now this.
That's one side of it. The other side of it is they also want more guaranteed contracts, so that if they get injured or if they get cut before their contract expires, they still get that money.
Right. So if it's not half, it's more share. They're trying to. That's their goal. They're trying to get. That's what I'm saying. Are they trying? Is this lockout? Is the goal for the athletes? Are they trying to gain that control?
I think.
I'm trying to explain what I mean by.
I
think.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Think. I mean the two things you guys brought up, like as far as the social, impacts and the politics of everything that's just going around the league, in terms of people getting suspended, in terms of people getting signed who shouldn't be signed, and people not getting signed. Like that's a part of it for sure. That's definitely a part of it. I don't know how much that factors in. I'm sure it does. Now and then on your side, in terms of being like, being able to brand yourself in order of being able to, take care of yourself outside of the league, I wouldn't say that's necessarily directly a part of the lockout because right now, the NFL is doing a lot to kind of, coach and train people about life during and after football. And they're trying to, ease up on restrictions as far as celebrations, as far as, decorating your cleats, as far as having your own charities, all that sort of stuff. But what I would say is a part of what you're talking about is just being taken care of, like in terms of healthcare and insurance and stuff like that. I think that's a bigger part of like from the personal player individual side than necessarily like, being able to build a brand and a business, because I mean a lot of players already do that.
Right.
So I don't think that's necessarily so much of an issue as much as the money and really the healthcare and being able to take care of themselves.
Well, if that's the case, shouldn't a lot of athletes try to be like, if I'm correct, isn't that what free agency is? Like they're their own.
It's more complicated than that because it's like a union. So free agency is essentially like a pool, right? Where it's free agency in that you can go anywhere to any of these teams because you're in this pool, but it's not really free because I mean contracts can only be negotiated under the collective bargaining agreement.
Okay.
So basically it's the players and their agents meeting with the owners and their lawyers and saying these are the stipulations we're going to put on what it means to be a franchise under the NFL umbrella and what it means to be an employee under those different franchises. And these are the terms and protections you have as being a part of our Players Association and Union, if that makes sense.
In perpetuity, which pretty much just means beyond throughout the galaxy. So
basically the CBA just puts a ceiling and a top, right? So in free agency, you can't go over that. You can't go under that.
And that's why
there's a cap.
There's a cap, yeah, basically.
They raise the cap,
which is part of the CBA too. So they'll give teams salary cap, like that will all be part of it.
And they'll give, like, recently they've given teams more money to kind of so they can spend more money, and like they've made it to where their floor is increased to where you have to spend more money. Certain teams,
yeah,
some of them don't spend that money at all. And with that, you factor in the fact that yes, there's free agency, but also in the NFL, there's scarcity at certain positions. But on the same token, there's also an abundance of talent. So let's say a guy like Gerald McCoy, who's been an All-Pro multiple times, one of the best defensive players in the league still, and at his position, they'll age him out because he's almost 30. And they're like, well, we're not going to pay you as much. We can get somebody cheaper, and we'll get 3 guys to do your one job. And that's the problem that they're having, and that's why free agency, certain players who aren't established and don't necessarily have a good foundation financially or whatever, or they're still growing and they're still on their first contract, or like a guy like Dak Prescott who's still trying to get paid, this CBA is trash for them because they have no leverage. And if you're negotiating and you're only getting 47% of the take, and you're in disarray, and the owners are all on the same page, and Roger Goodell is on the same page as the owners, well, you're already going in kind of screwed. So you have to negotiate differently. You have to handle things differently when you're the one who's coming into a negotiation and you already have no leverage. Like, the players are the capital. If there are no players, there's no sport.
Right.
So with that, what a lot of NFL players have to do, yes, they do have to focus on uniting and being one. And sadly, the NFL Players Union is so piss poor at their job because they're not afraid to do a work stoppage. It's like, oh, all this money on the table, all this litigation. The lawyers always get paid. There's three things when it comes to a lawyer that is just universally true. They always get paid. You don't hire a lawyer. You know a lawyer. And three, I don't mean to be like really dark and facetious about it, but all the lawyers know each other. So a lot of these deals don't get done at the table or in a courtroom. They get done on a golf course or a yacht somewhere. So you also have to factor that in too. There's a lot. It's all about relationships, who you trust, who you actually want to negotiate with. And that's why this CBA is probably the most important in like NFL history coming up, depending on what they do and like who does what.
I think it's also really important because just overall football is kind of at an existential crisis. It's not at a full-blown existential crisis, but it's definitely in the rising action leading up to that, just based off of all the things we've been seeing with the political and societal factors and, you know, CTE and just overall, like, the popularity of basketball and football and NHL growing and NFL really kind of just being stagnant. So that's why it's going to be so important, because the NFL owners are going to be making the argument of, well, we're not really making any more money, so why are we going to give you a bigger piece? And the NFL players are going to say, well, you've been taking such a big piece for such a long time and basically build an empire on our backs and on the heads of all these other retirees. So they need to be compensated, and we need to be compensated, period. And then it becomes even more complicated when you factor in the XFL starting up in next year or the following year, and all these other leagues that have been in and out between the AAF, you know, Ricky Williams League. I think there's another league, Flag Football League, like all these different leagues. People are trying to figure out alternative means because this is on the horizon. Like, you know, like I said, you know, we've been talking about this for years, and now it's just getting more and more and more and more real. More and more people are talking about it.
And there's a lot of NFL players going into wrestling. Wrestling schools are trying to get NFL players at insane rates. Former offensive tackle for the Falcons, Quinn Ojinaka, he goes by the name of Moose. He wrestles in TNA Impact, and he's getting pretty good. There's Roman Reigns used to play football. There's a lot of former NFL guys who are transitioning into wrestling. The Rock used to play football. So there's also that. There's acting. Like there's lanes for cats who are realizing, okay, this NFL thing isn't going to work. How can I pivot it? How can I flip it? You got Rashard Mendenhall writing for Ballers. Like, there's a lot of people out there doing a lot of different things. So, and then also you got to look coaching gigs. Like, I'll give you an example. So Herm Edwards, head coach, Arizona State. He just hired Marvin Lewis, the former head coach for the Cincinnati Bengals of like 15, 16 years or whatever, who just stepped down. He's now he's an assistant, or he's an advisor for Arizona State, who has a bunch of former NFL players on that coaching staff. I think Kevin Mawai is an analyst. Derek Hagan's one of the coaches. Antonio Pierce. There's a list. So ASU staff with major NFL ties. Herm Edwards, head coach. Marvin Lewis, advisor. Analyst Kevin Mawai, Pro Football Hall of Famer. Linebackers coach and one of the best recruiters in the country, Antonio Pierce, who also was Long Beach Poly's head coach, brought them back to prominence before he left. and his son plays safety for Boise State. Special teams coach Sean Slocum, NFL assistant, and their analyst Derek Hagan, NFL receiver, who's an Arizona State alum. There's a lot of these opportunities that are popping up for players and people, and whether it's like rec league football, like minor league football, whatever you want to call it.
But can't you argue and say that those opportunities have always been there? It's just that they didn't really have, not the accessibility, but a lot of these athletes before, they didn't have that.
That's why, like, what you're talking about.
Smart, they're
that's why, like, what
now.
you're talking about was more of a bigger issue, I'd say, on the last CBA when the NFL was a lot harder on like everyone kind of being the same and everyone not being different. The league has, started to realize that players are their best and biggest ambassadors, just with their social media following. So they're finally starting to embrace them being themselves. One, and two, because of the lack of guaranteed money, because of all the injury risk, they're starting to, I mean, they always kind of have since probably, the 2000s, but now it's definitely growing every year in terms of like, okay, they're trying to get players to develop skills outside of football, like learning how to build a brand, learning how to transition to, coaching jobs like Kenny's talking about, or GM jobs, or, just even just the importance of going back to school. We're hearing more and more about these players finishing their degrees.
So right now they're just more like, we want to make sure we have that security blanket. If no matter what the situation is, and no matter how this league goes, we want to have that security, whether if it's financial security, whether it's job security, whatever it is.
It's part of that, but I think more so, and the reason why this is brewing for so long, and the reason why it's going to be such a hard negotiation to happen, is because, like, that's definitely part of it. But as we all know, I mean, money is basically a synonym for power.
Right.
So as much as it is about the dollars and the cents and all that, it's also about the power, because you do factor in the societal impacts of Cap not getting signed and these other people getting signed. And it's just like, basically, players just want more power. They want more share.
Name? I was reading up on him.
Incognito.
Richie.
Yeah, we'll get to that later. But the last thing, so, all right, is there anything else you want to say before we transition out on the CBA?
No, I have some college football news, but I'll say that for later. Yeah,
so the CBA, one of the other things that the teams are going to try to negotiate is they want to have an 18-game season instead of a 16-game season, which would basically cut out 2 preseason games and make them regular season games, which, I mean, it depends, right? Because that's 2 more games where players could get hurt on one hand. On the other hand, maybe a longer season means they finally expand the roster from 53 to 72 or 63 or whatever. So that could be potentially be a few hundred more jobs, full-time jobs for players who are already on practice squads or already, around facilities. They're going to be able to get more money, more opportunity.
That's really just the collective boo from players who don't want 2 more games on their bodies.
I feel that, but at the same time, it's like also fans are paying the same prices for that. So
they're not getting CTE.
We can all agree preseason is pretty much a waste. So why not figure out a solution?
Why play more games
that helps everyone from top to bottom?
Do you really want to see? You're going to see, if you have an 18-game schedule, you're going to see Tuesday night football games. Do you really want to see NFL Tuesday night football games?
Yeah, because that's probably the one day you have a day off and you can actually watch a game.
So when you play on a Thursday and then have to turn around and play on
honestly,
and then after that Tuesday you're going to play next Monday.
Honestly, real talk, I'd rather watch a game on a Tuesday than a Thursday.
Because you
Taco Tuesday.
Taco Thursday, Tequila Thursday.
There's no. I wish there was Taco Thursday. I don't know why Taco Thursday never. I always say that you can never find them. They never take off. I don't know why.
That's true. Damn.
I just think phonetically Taco Tuesdays is better, so it's just like, Taco Tuesday.
Thirsty Thursdays.
Taco Thursday.
Like salami and pepperoni.
Yeah.
We're not gonna talk about that.
Essentially the same thing, but pepperoni gets all the clout.
No, pepperoni and salami are not the same thing.
They actually are.
No, they're not.
You